Doing a mic check. Hello, hello. 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is, I think, yeah, this is enough.
Yeah. Please watch. This is very hard to get this set up. There she goes. Okay, this thing.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You got me? Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3.
My apologies for keeping you waiting. Unfortunately, Circuit Court was not exactly slow on this rainy Friday. And before we begin, to all of our journalism friends today, I want to let you know there will be some graphic information, including in this release, that will be sensitive to some viewers. So those of you that are live streaming, please do so at your risk, okay? Because there is some information that you need to know as adults and members of our community, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's appropriate for all viewers. So it's up to you if you're going to live stream. Thank you. Okay. First of all, one of the reasons that we are doing a live press conference today is because I think that it is very important for members of our community to take some of this information and use it in their own lives. Although this investigation into what motivated Juan Sanchez to attack in our community is still ongoing, a picture is emerging that prompts me to want to remind everyone how important it is to be aware of your surroundings, the possible danger in your surroundings. That's not what I'm trying to accomplish here. But everyone should be empowered to recognize what they can do to keep themselves safe, to keep their loved ones safe, and to be able to go about their business, enjoying their own peace and dignity. That is so important, ladies and gentlemen. And so I want to take this opportunity to reinforce those principles. All of you, I included, see those walking around with their noses in their cell phones, engaged in conversations and not paying attention. I mean, some of you probably even have to brake your cars hard because they're not watching as they step off a curb. That is not what keeps us safe. What keeps us safe is being aware of how others are behaving, things that when you put common sense together, you recognize could be dangerous, and then you take action. We all have incredible senses when things aren't quite right. I repeat, I am not suggesting that you presume anyone has nefarious motives. There's a lot of really kind people in this community that want to help. This is where people get injured because they were not paying attention. And none of us want that to happen to any of you. Now, for 19-year-old Anna Sue Rocha, Annie, as she was known to her friends and family, the Annie that many of us knew that worked at Martin's. Annie recognized the danger, but she did not have a chance to stop it. At approximately 5:30 p.m. on Monday, January 27, 2025, Juan Sanchez, an adult male aged 54, had been inside the Martin store for approximately 20 minutes. During that time, he observed other young females in the store. During that time, he observed other young females in the store. During that time, he was watching other young females in the store. I impress upon that because it is important, ladies and gentlemen. He then loaded his cart with some alcoholic beverages, and he proceeded to the self-checkout area where Annie was working. And he paused, and he waited. And then when Annie was by herself working at the self-checkout, he approached the self-checkout and he scanned his first item of alcohol, which requires an attendant to check ID. At that point, Annie came to check his ID, collected his ID, and took it back to her register as she was trained to do. And as she was returning the ID to Mr. Sanchez, it was at that point where he displayed his handgun that he pulled from his right pocket and began saying things to her. He made it for her to see, and you could see a visible reaction from Annie. He then grabbed Annie's wrist, and he prevented her from getting away. He led her a few steps toward the exit as Annie was trying to communicate something. Annie spoke to him, and she was very visibly shaken. However, she could not flee because he physically... Another female customer that was in that self-checkout area observed what was happening, and even though she couldn't see everything, she could definitely sense that a young female was in distress. And she immediately reported that to a manager that was nearby. That manager quickly responded, came over and confronted Sanchez. And at that point, Sanchez told her, she needs to listen to me or I will kill her. The manager tried to de-escalate in a very short amount of time. That allowed Annie to be free and to take a couple of steps backward. And it was at that point in time that Sanchez raised the gun and shot her. And Annie died. As you can imagine, the terror, the immediate reactions of everyone in the vicinity was to run. And that manager called out for everyone to run, and then she ran others to safety. Sanchez shot not only toward the exit and other patrons in that, but other individuals that were in the self-checkout running back toward the interior of the store. That is when Mr. Jeffries was shot and killed. So many people could have been injured that day. And but for the bravery of the Martin's employees and the quick reactions that occurred, which I will attribute to the active shooter training that Martin's provides to its employees, I believe lives were saved. But it was too late for Annie and for Ben. Sanchez then began pushing his cart toward the exit. When he turned around, walked a few steps back, and shot Annie additional times as she lay on the floor. He then continued to push his cart out the exit, across the roadway, and around the east edge of the apartment building just south of Martin's. He continued down that sidewalk to the south side of that building, which is where he encountered police. I should say police encountered him. Although I cannot comment on that part of the investigation at this time because there is still significant information that is coming in to allow us to make decisions on that aspect of the investigation. I felt it important to share this information with you at this time, just to remind everyone, pay attention. One of the witnesses articulated, as a woman, you can tell when other women are in trouble. And that is true. But all of us have the ability to powers and protect ourselves. So I hope this to be very empowering for everyone listening and watching. What we know at this point from the investigation, even though it is relatively early, is that Sanchez was drawn to young females. He had recently had some changes in his personal life that may have eroded whatever prior self-control or self-regulation that he had been able to exhibit. However, on Monday evening, that self-control was not present. Other reports of suspicious behavior involving young females have been reported since Monday, and our investigators are gathering and further investigating every one of those reports. In each case, the young lady did avoid further contact with Sanchez. One reported that she had actually obtained a protective order in the state of Illinois. That was a couple of years ago, almost 3 years ago now. And although a police report was made, no further documentation has been found demonstrating additional formal action on that report. Mr. Sanchez appears to have moved to the location where he lived at the time in April. However, no reports have been located documenting complaints to the Elkhart County law enforcement officials since his move here. I want to conclude my comments with a request for people to stop spreading gossip, rumors, and information that is second, third, fourth hand, that seems interesting and seems scandalous, but is irresponsible and not true. Out of respect for all that have experienced this unspeakable trauma and are trying to navigate the emotion exposed to this and the circumstances of the healing process as necessary, to tell the story for you interferes with that healing process, and it needs to stop. Social media is not a platform when it comes to news. And for those of you who are doing it, stop now, because the misinformation is causing significant harm to those who are traumatized by this event. To the Martin's Supermarket employees, to the family, friends, loved ones of Annie Rocha and Ben Jeffrey, to the lady that notified the manager and the manager that led others to safety, to countless police officers and first responders that helped, and to every member of our community that has lifted all of us up in prayer, that have been here to support, and that have respected the trauma that they are experiencing. We are with you, and we thank you. Your experiences, your courage to keep all examples of the good in our beloved community, and I thank you for your examples of leadership. I will take a few questions, but again, they have to be limited to the facts and circumstances surrounding the shooting of Annie Rocha and Ben Jeffrey inside the Martin's Supermarket. Anyone have questions? Yes, sir.
What's the significance of talking about the other females that were in the store that they've been watching for?
There was behavior observed by Mr. Sanchez that made it clear that he was looking for a victim. I will leave it at that. Other questions? Seeing, yes?
I have a question for Chief, if that's okay.
They are only able to answer very, very.
Check on the mental health of the officer. I know they were in the hospital, but after being shot at and taking a life themselves, how they were doing that.
So, Chief Milanese is with us. However, I'll leave it to asking that question very much. Any other questions? Thank you all for taking the time to be here today. We do appreciate your work.